Well, welcome to day number 2. This is Tuesday, and here we can continue rolling with the story that surrounds the idea of the arrival of the wise men to Jerusalem, and they are now seeing the weaned child, the toddler, the no longer an infant, but now they're encountering the toddler, Jesus, the son, as far as they know, of Mary and Joseph, both in the Davidic line, both from the tribe of Judah, and they celebrate him as he who is born King of the Jews. This has caused quite a stir in Jerusalem, and things are starting to get pretty dicey. We just need to realize that even when God is moving, doing things, even miraculous, amazing things, there are people who don't take too kindly to it. And Herod, who is, some would argue, half Jewish, others would argue is from descendancy of Abraham, but has no Jewish roots. He, in fact, has been around Israel, but he is actually Nabatean and Idumean. Perhaps the amount of Jewish blood in him is very low, but he is made a deal with Rome, and he is serving as the king. He has become the vassal king of Israel. The Jews aren't too happy with it, because one thing we know, he is not a descendant of David. And when the wise men come into town and ask, "Where is he that is born King of the Jews? We have seen his star arise in the east, and we have come to greet him," it causes quite an upset. The whole city, the whole leadership structure of the city is astir. Herod is a sly person. He has not gotten where he has by playing it cool, and he is getting increasingly vengeful. He has destroyed family members. He has literally had them killed. And so maybe he's more like the leader of North Korea than about anything that we would have in our world today. The leader of North Korea took an uncle and executed him with a 50 millimeter shell, I think, artillery piece. And so by brutalizing people even close to you, it has this sense of fear that grips people's heart. Well, into the middle of this comes this great announcement of this big event. So we're going to jump right in to this big event. And after the big event, there is still a faith challenge. We tend to be event-driven people. And so when the big event happens, afterwards we just kind of collapse. Everything that was necessary in order to get to the big event, we just want to bail out of and quit. It's a one-off. It's something that we wanted to see happen, and now we're going to go off to something else. Thank you very much. But there is a following through, and there's a continuation in faith. And so after the big event, and what is the big event? Well, I would argue that the big event was the birth. Now they are confronted with the visit of the wise men in Jerusalem about 2 years and 2 months later. And now there is a continuing faith challenge, because it's a process. You're moving through. Joseph and Mary are moving along a pathway that's being illuminated for them and laid out for them. And faith is required. Does that sound familiar? You and I have a pathway being laid out before us, and faith is required to walk out the faith challenge. So let's jump in here, Matthew chapter 2, and look at verses 14 and 15. It says, "So he got up." Now, why did Joseph get up? He had a dream, and in the dream, he was warned by an angel of the Lord to get up and go to Egypt, because there are those that are seeking the child's life to destroy him. So I just want us to notice that what is this man's name? What is Jesus' adoptive father's name? Joseph. Does that sound familiar? I believe we met a Joseph in the book of Genesis, and he was the youngest son at the time, the firstborn son of the beloved bride Rachel, and the firstborn son of Jacob and Rachel. The others were beside the point for Jacob. This was the meaningful one, and he gives him a coat of many colors, and he is betrayed by his brothers, and he's sold into slavery in Egypt. And so this has been a background for the story in the book of Genesis that culminates with him coming to second in command of Egypt and rescuing Egypt and that area of the world at the time, and providing a safe haven for the 70 people that were then part of Israel. It started out with Abraham and a promise, and now it has expanded to 70 people. Still doesn't seem like much to conquer the world with, but it's 70 people, and they are now safe harbored in Egypt, and thanks to a dreamer, and his name is Joseph. Well, thanks to this dreamer, Joseph, he's already had one dream. He's going to have four. He's going to have 4 dreams. This is the second dream. The first one was to not be afraid. Go ahead, take Mary as your wife, because you're not guilty and she's not guilty. And the second intervention by dream with this dreamer Joseph is he's told to go to Egypt because there are those who are seeking to destroy his son's life. And so what do we get? So he got up, took the child and his mother during the night. So what do we have here? Obedience. An instant obedience. I would say an instant and severe obedience. So when the Lord spoke to him, he took it as an imperative, and he got up because he just had a dream. It's in the night, so it's still dark out. He took the child and his mother during the night and left for Egypt. And then here's the next thing that he did. The first thing he did was to act upon this prod by the angel of the Lord in a dream. Had already spoken to him and helped him through this situation. But now this is not just a big event, this is a process. Now he listens and immediately obeys, and he packs up the wife and kid, and off they go to Egypt. And now here's the next piece, where he stayed until the death of Herod. So there were Jewish people living in Egypt. They could go down to Alexandria or a couple other places in Egypt, and they would find a Jewish community, people who had stayed there rather than living in the land of Israel. And so they went and could have been part of a group of Jews that live in Egypt, and they would be able to find them easily. They would travel and find them. But when was this? Again, this was at the end of December, early January as we would see it. And in that part of the world, that's a cold time. That's like one of the worst and coldest times to be traveling. I still say that this is one of the reasons why Jesus, out of the background of his family, says in Matthew 24, pray that your flight not be in winter. Pray that your flight not be in winter. I think that this was part of the discussions from time to time around the dinner table. And so the next key was that they stayed. They stayed in Egypt until the death of Herod. So by a dream of a Joseph, they go to Egypt. Isn't that interesting? Dream, Joseph, Egypt. Those 3 items come together. And this can be a confirmation in the heart of Joseph. So we need to consider Joseph and his willingness to not only hear from God, but then act upon what he hears from God. And so by so doing, he protects his wife and his son. And he does it until they stay until the death of Herod. They're going to hear about when Herod dies. That news is going to make its way across the trade routes, and it's going to find its way into their neighborhood. They're going to hear about it. And it's not going to take longer than 2 weeks to get the news of when Herod dies. And so was fulfilled what the Lord had said through the prophet. Now, one of the things you'll notice in the book of Matthew, he's really interested in the Word of God being fulfilled. The Word of God is fulfilled when people align with it and place faith in the Word of God. And so was fulfilled what the Lord had said through the prophet. Out of Egypt I called my son. Now, where was that said? That was said in the book of Hosea, the 11th chapter. We've been studying Hosea, and it cheats ahead of where we've been in about the 9th chapter. And in 2 chapters we'll encounter this, and I'll remind you when we get there. Out of Egypt I called my son. When he was a child, out of Egypt I called my son. So this is now creating a connection not only with Israel, but now with the Messiah, the one, the elect one of Israel. This Jesus of Nazareth, Jesus the infant, no longer infant, the toddler, newly weaned son of Mary and Joseph, who are originally from Nazareth. That's where we meet Mary when she's single, and it's out of Egypt I called my son. So we find the fulfillment of what the Lord has said. So let's remember, let's meditate upon the idea that it is about a process, and it's always about faith, continuing to act upon belief and trust in the Word of God, even if it's out of the land and down in Egypt, realizing that he has sent some wise men by to give you some gifts which will financially underwrite you while you're out of the country. Isn't God good? He makes complete and full provision, and we can trust him on every detail. The Lord bless you. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow.